Intentional Currency podcast. My name is Yasmeen. I'm the founder of the Intentional Currency, and our mission is to help Muslim women take control of their money, build wealth in a way that's pleasing to Allah, and feel confident making financial decisions that serve their families and their communities. In this podcast, we're bringing you real conversations from some incredible women who share our mission. These women are leaders, change makers, and financial literacy advocates from around the world. Together, we'll explore what it means to create wealth that's rooted in faith and designed to have a positive impact. Each guest brings their own journey, their struggles, their wins, whether it's setting up an emergency fund, learning how to invest, or figuring out how to manage finance and family. Our hope is that their stories inspire you, empower you, and remind you that financial empowerment is for every Muslim woman who wants it. Thank you so much for joining us, and let's get into the conversation. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the Intentional Currency podcast. I'm so excited to introduce everybody to our special guest today, Amani Ahmed, who is a multi-seven-figure investor and who is here to share the gems behind her journey to building wealth. Assalamu alaikum, welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you for having me here, Sister Yasmeen. Thank you.
No, it's my absolute pleasure. So, can you explain to everyone here, how did you get into this whole concept of building wealth?
Absolutely. I don't know. I feel like it's always been one of those internal things that I was always drawn to money, and I like buying stuff. So I grew up by Egyptian immigrant parents, and we lived in a 2-bedroom apartment. It was me and my 2 sisters. And back in the days when I was young, we're not going to give it away the years, you can go into the store like your Best Buy and order things, but they also had catalogs. And I would love to go through these 400-page, 200-page catalogs and mark them up. And knowing that my parents, very humble beginnings, didn't have much to provide for us in that way. They took care of our necessities as far as food, clothing, and shelter. I think just in the back of my mind, I was like, I want to be able to have stuff. I want to have money. At that time, I don't think I could conceptualize, okay, I want to be a millionaire and I want to do this and I want to do that. But from that young age, just wanting things gave me the initial spark of interest of wanting financial rewards or financial work in the future.
Do you think there was like a specific experience that kind of led you to wanting to have that financial independence or financial freedom?
I wish I could say it was. I think it's a combination of my whole childhood going into teenage years and adulthood. My parents, my dad worked as a cab driver. My mom, she hustled. I mean, she worked 3 jobs as a waitress. So I derive my work ethic from her. And she was very serious about finances. You know, a bill comes in and she wants to send it out the next day. So I think my financial and money acumen initially started from seeing the way she dealt with money and how serious she was about making money. And then it kind of spilled over to going in school and being with other people that had nice shoes and nice clothes. And it's like, I want that too. And let's not talk about the high school days. Everybody is trying to show everybody out. So I think it was the strongest that I felt that I wanted financial freedom or some level of money when I was in high school. And I noticed my entrepreneurial spirit coming out at that time because I was selling candy from 7-Eleven and just like doing different odds and ends, doing the newspaper. So I think around that time it really began to spark, but I can't pinpoint one particular thing that created that. I think it's just a combination of the way I grew up and seeing the environment around me.
Yeah, I think that's so relatable, like having such a hardworking parent. And I know you mentioned like a couple of different, I guess you could say, side hustles of selling things, or how did you get into sort of your first real source of income, and what was that like?
Believe it or not, I was actually 13 years old. So my mom had a fellow Muslim friend and he owned a carpet business. So I was doing accounting, and I by no means in my professional career that I think I was going to end up in accounting. But if I just look back at the very first thing I did was I was keeping the books for his carpet business. I had like a sheet of paper every week write up the different sales, total them out, and so forth. So that was my first real hustle. I don't remember what I got paid, if I got paid versus my mom, or if we were just doing it pro bono. And then it led to, yeah, doing the 7-Eleven candy selling, doing the newspaper. And I found myself in my late teenage years doing like little odd and end sale jobs, calling, cold calling, those sort of things. Some of these jobs only lasted a day or 4 days. So yeah, that was my initial beginning with trying to work for money or make money.
So I understand that part of your portfolio had real estate. How did you end up getting into real estate, or how did you go from these little jobs into the industry of real estate?
Yeah, so during that time, I mean, I was anything and everything that I thought would be of interest that would make me money, I was open to. And I would see these infomercials that talked about owning real estate, how much money you can make on properties and so forth. And I remember purchasing my first real estate program, somebody's shellings, and reviewing it. And then I went into reading like Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad Poor Dad. So I got more immersed into real estate, and it just felt like naturally I gravitated to wanting to be part of the real estate industry. Now, I didn't jump in real estate because this was like in my early teens. I didn't jump into real estate at that time. It was some time later. I ended up, because when I finished high school, I went into um, a county community college because I had the interest of becoming a OBGYN. I could not do chemistry or physics to save my life. And I had to transfer to a 4-year college, and my parents were not having me anywhere out of state. So it was a local HBCU, Bowie State University in Maryland. And there, I just realized it was like a small wake up call like, hold on, you don't like blood. It's a great idea. You want to be an OBGYN for the sake of helping mothers bring life into this world, but it's not in your cards. So switched to psychology because I thought I was good with advising friends of their relationships, family, what then shortly after that, I thought about the different, jobs or different businesses that I was trying to get into. And it was like maybe retail, business retail. And when I switched to there, that's when I actually got into accounting. I shared that to say that that led me into doing some internships. And one of the internships where I ended up taking my full time position was a firm that primarily focused on real estate investors, providing taxation and accounting services and specialized tax credits for those type of individuals. Before I started interning with them, I did meet my first husband. He had a couple of rental properties, so I'd like to say that's where I began my real estate journey, as purchasing my first condo with his assistance.
As somebody who was a Muslim woman who is a part of a visible minority, what was it like going into this world of accounting, very male dominated field, and then going into real estate and becoming an investor? What was your experience as a Muslim woman?
I was very conscious of being a minority woman going into public accounting. And I remember I had a friend at that time, and his brother was an assistant manager for the bank. And he advised me, like, once you go into the corporate environment, it's very different. You have to do more than your Caucasian counterparts. So his advice was that you have to go in earlier, you have to stay earlier just to stay at that same pace. So having the work ethic that I garnered from my mom and getting this advice going into public accounting, it was like I already had built in my mind that I have to prove myself every day, all day. So there were no breaks. And I'm, Alhamdulillah, Rabbil Alameen, God made me for that I can show up, do what I needed to do, represent our clients or the manager or the partner that I was working for. So I think it was just the understanding that who I am going into it. And I didn't have a problem with having something to prove. Anybody that knows me, I'm very discreet, I'm very modest. So my sisters say you like a silent thunderstorm and the person don't even know you thundering. And what she means by that is I'll come in and so unassuming, but when things are getting done and results are being seen, it's like, oh, whoa, so I knew that enough about myself coming into it. I was up for the challenge, and I think I had something to prove to myself as it related to going into the professional world and ultimately wanting to have my own practice. Just the entrepreneurial spirit from back when I was 13 years old, keeping, the books of my mom's friend carpet company. I just knew I wanted to have my own business. And a mentor back then had told me the best way to start your own business is make the mistakes on others. So I was fully present in terms of wanting to get as much as I can to set up a solid foundation. The real estate interest as a minority is pretty interesting because I didn't go into it being very transparent, very understanding of being a minority as I did with the accounting. I feel like when it comes to buying, people don't care as long as you're coming with the income or the credit and so forth. So that wasn't as inferior or as intimidating. It's just so many nuances. So having the right people in your corner, having the right banks to work with, I think that was more my focus because that in itself was a lot to handle. So, being in a minority in the space of real estate and in the area that I live in and invest in, majority of the residents here are African American or of minority descent. So, I think that also too didn't make me feel that I was part of an industry that was, oppressing or inferior to minority individuals, including the African American woman.
I think that's so interesting, that piece of advice of knowing that you're going to have to go in early, you're going to have to stay late. And I think it's an interesting perspective when we can acknowledge that coming in with that mindset almost puts us at an advantage in the sense that we're not coming in for a free ride. We're ready to put in the work. And I think ultimately sometimes that can bring us very far. I'm curious because you didn't just go into accounting. You didn't just become an accountant. You kind of went all the way. And I'm curious if you can share maybe some parts of the mindset shift that allowed you to take it to the next level and really build really a legacy.
Yeah. So I think it first started with this just natural urge or wanting to be an entrepreneur. I think it landed with accounting because I even tried like travel destination doing buses from like Maryland to New York. I mean, I tried it all. I believe Allah set up certain things in place to make it be like a no brainer. And what I mean by that is when I was trying to figure myself out at this 4-year university, I just went into business management because my retail work experience. And one of the classes I had to take was Principles of Accounting. And the professor, Simon Minyara, at the time asked me, what is your major? And I said, business management. And he said, why not accounting? And I'm like, wow, what's accounting? And he was like, meet me in my office at such and such time. So I show up and he's kind of talking to me, of the difference in terms of opportunities if I graduated with a business management degree or an accounting degree, and how much more money I could be making and the opportunities. And I was like, okay, that seemed like a no brainer, right? So when I was going to the 4-year college, I'm non traditional because I didn't go, consistently every semester when I was in the community college, and I was a commuter, so I didn't live on campus. So for me, I kind of felt like I was behind the 8 ball. It didn't show up in my face, but just knowing my age and the other students, my peers, their ages being younger and they're living on campus. So I think silently in my head, I had something to prove there. But as I got more into the accounting and into the numbers, I always loved math from a young age. I think things like the pieces of the puzzle just naturally began to come together. And as I'm taking classes, it's like I want to participate just naturally more into the accounting organization. So I became president. Now I'm a lifetime member of the National Association of Black Accountants, NABA. And that was one of the biggest skills that I didn't know that would take me so far in the industry was the ability to network with other peers at other universities when we would have these regional student conferences. When they had the national conferences, they had both levels, the students as well as the professionals that's out there, making the serious money, the CPAs and the accountants, the CFOs and CEOs in some cases. So it was a whole world that was opened up to me, and learning how to talk and have conversations with professionals. I didn't realize that that would be one of the strongest skill set that would take me far into accounting. And graduating from that 4-year university, I graduated with in my major with a flow and overall magna cum laude. I think it was a 3.93 or 3.83. So I went from a failing biology student to graduating with honors. And when I graduated was May of 2002, and that was right after 9/11. So everybody was doing hiring freezes. And mashallah, Allahu Akbar, I had four different job offers. I had peers that were graduating, did not have any job offers. And it really was because of the networking, and it was being willing to apply for internships, whether they were paid or not paid. I think naturally I just have this thing to learn. I'm just hungry. And I think that hunger is a skill set. It is a strength in terms of getting you in the right places, making possibly the right money, giving you possible opportunities. And I was just willing to don't care about ego, don't care about pride. If I have to walk up to that person, and everybody's intimidated to walk up to her and ask her for an internship, I'm going to do it. I have really nothing to lose. So those are some of the things that I gained that really helped me, excel in accounting when I was working in public accounting, and then, a few years later, starting my own practice.
I think that's so interesting because, and I was just speaking about this earlier today, this idea that, especially in business, it's so easy to get caught up in numbers. And, we have our KPIs, you have clients, you have numbers, you have profit margins, you have all these things. But business always comes down to human interactions. And it's people, it's networking, it's taking care of your network, it's reaching out to people, connecting with people. And it's so easy to forget about that, but it's such a big part of growing wealth. It's just treating people well.
Yeah, and that really has been my secret sauce, Yasmeen. I mean, you hit the nail on the head. I get asked all the time, how were you able to accomplish this and that and do so well, whatever have you. I just hired a business coach maybe in the last 4 or 5 years, right after COVID. And I started my tax practice in November 2007. That just kind of gives you an idea. Maybe if I did hire a coach earlier, I'd be further along, but only Allah knows. For me, I never got caught up in the weeds of numbers. The first thing he asked me was like, how much you want to make? I was like, being the best at what I do is going to reveal how much I'm going to make. And that had always been my attitude. And I think probably from going into public accounting, having something to prove, to show up and be my best every day kind of spilled over into starting my own practice. And I tell people now, even clients, because I work with a lot of business clients, I mean, it's not about what you make, it's about being the best in your industry. What does you want people to talk about you. That's the best type of marketing. So, like now, I can't say this was day one of my tax practice because I was in desperation mode. I got to get clients. But now, when I get on the phone with a prospect, they're like, "Oh, I'm so glad to talk to you. I know you're very busy. Such and such told me, about the wonderful things." So I'm already sold before I get on the phone or if I get on to these Zoom meetings. And that's kind of what you want in order to build your practice, because you got people out there marketing your services and you're not doing anything. And we have that opposite problem. We kind of turn away anywhere between like 175 to 200 clients a year and refer them out. So, but the only way that I got there was the understanding how important of the soft skills. My large clients, right? One of them has a net worth of 10 million. Another one has like a bunch of properties. I think about 40 million is his portfolio. Ask me what we talk about. We spend 5 minutes on business. We spend 55 minutes on life. They don't care about that stuff. They want that human interaction. And when you understand that's what everybody yearns for, is to be heard, to be seen, to be understood. You People don't care how good you are. If they get along with you and they sense that you genuinely care, and I'm not cheap by no means, they will stroke a check. They have no problem doing it. But to your point, Yasmeen, looking at the care of a relationship, when I get on in meetings with my clients, I'm in their world. I can have, for example, my admin or my EA may say, well, this client is upset because we didn't e-file, when they paid for their tax return, or this, that, and the other. And I get on the phone or what have you, I don't hear none of that. I only see the person in front of me. Hey, what's going on? How's everything been? Okay, okay. How's the little man? I'm in their world. And then I let them into my world. And then at some point we get into the issue at hand. I understand such and such told me there was something with your tax return. And I don't have a problem admitting my faults. I'm sorry we didn't get it on time. This is what I'm willing to do. Bada bing, bada boom. They're happy you acknowledge, you heard them, you saw them, and you understood them.
I think that's such an important part of it is that people, and I'm not sure if it's kind of a generational cultural thing as well. There's that fear of getting things wrong, that fear of being vulnerable or holding yourself accountable. And I think it's so important to realize that actually your clients recognize that you're just a person. They're not expecting you to get it perfect. They're just expecting you to show up and be honest with them about what you've kind of done.
Yeah, and I think sometimes that comes from a lack of awareness, right? The world, when we externalize how we're supposed to function and operate as a business or as a CEO or someone that's trying to build wealth, of course, we're going to go outside and looking for answers, and we see this person and we want to emulate that person, and we see this person doing that. Okay, I want to do business that way. Um, but you may not be like that. The the easiest path to being able to be successful is becoming more self-aware, more in tune, and just be a true human being. Understand that Allah made you with flaws. And when you are willing to come to that reality. I think a lot of us want to live in this false reality, maybe of what we see on social media or whatever have you, thinking that no, people are just flawless and don't make mistakes. But if you look at some of these celebrities and some of these online influencers, you got stories left and right in terms of how they fell on hardship after making it, how they struggle with mental health and yada, yada, yada. So there's not no one on this earth, and Allah said you will be tested. So if this life is about testing, you get that. When you come to interact and you make these mistakes, humble yourself, because it's not just humbling yourself to the clients, humbling yourself to your maker. This is your maker made you to make mistakes, and he's testing you to see how you're going to react. Are you just going to, lie about it or not acknowledge it, that's a test between you and your maker. Really, that person that you did wrong by, they're not even the test. The test is with you. They're just a subject. They're just part of the test. So when you are insightful to the reality of your humanity, of the type of being Allah made you, I think it's easier to come to terms like, hey, I made this mistake. I made that mistake. And okay, Allah, if I'm not to make these mistakes, please help me. That's why we seek Him. The other thing is, I'm okay with making mistakes, but I don't stop there. People tend to be hard on themselves with situations and when things come up. I'm very more focused on the solution. I'm very solution driven. I'm not problem driven. And when you listen to people, they can go on for 30 minutes about a problem. Case in point, this morning, I had a good friend that I'm trying to help out in terms of getting her taxes done so she's not in a situation where she's going to be evicted from her home. And she didn't get we did 2 years of taxes. She didn't get both years at the state level, and she's sending me a message in the morning, and you just kind of know. So, and I'm like, let's get on the phone. Let's call them. So we call, we wait, we get on the phone, and we're calling state, and she's going on about federal. And I had to wheel her back in. I'm like, hold on, we're on the phone about state. So she asked you about state, da 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 da. And she's like, oh, I'm sorry. And she answered the question. And then the lady from state tax authority told us what the issue was, why she wasn't getting her refund. And I asked additional questions in terms of possible ways for us to remedy that. I'm already focused, okay, this is the issue. She's not getting refund. How can we get it where she can get a refund if that's an option? So getting off the phone, my friend was grateful in the sense that, okay, you gave me truth, but once again, it's just like being very intentional about sticking with what the solution is and not being so provoked with the problem. And you get that in business. If you're going to provide a professional service, you have to get good at knowing when to be emotional and when to take the emotions out. I recently had a situation with a client and she was going back and forth. We didn't file her tax return when she paid, and we have a two-step process. You pay, you approve your draft. You pay, you approve your draft. She didn't approve her draft, so we didn't file the return. Nonetheless, her thing was, you filed it in the past, and she's been with us for years. I mean, to her point, she's right, because we only instituted the approval thing the last couple of years. So she's sending a bunch of emails, very disgruntled. She calls the office, and my office admin was like, I can't with her. And I was like, I called my office admin. I said, this is what you want to communicate. And I said, sometimes you got to understand, when you eat the chicken with bones, you got to throw out. Eat the chicken, spit out the bones. And I was like, I don't care for her emotional, and her drama. What I want her to get is that if we file a certain way, what impact it will have on her tax return, we can get it done. This is our new rules now. So really focused on facts, focused on solution, and not that it made her any happier, but she was compliant. So yeah.
I think you said it perfectly. Like, that's a big part of our job, and that's what I think people are expecting, is they don't understand the ins and out of the industry that we're in. And it's up to us to kind of lend them our understanding, and they can kind of gauge our response, and that improves their emotional state. And so it's a big part of our role, I think, to have that emotional intelligence and not to get caught up in the drama of when there is a problem. It's our job to be the calm and to be offering solutions.
Absolutely. I mean, I have clients where I've made some huge mistakes. They're still with me 15 years later. 13 years later. One actually does, the handyman work here at my house. So for me, I don't see mistake as an end all be all. Now, if that client chooses, that has been the experience for people, but I always go to my intention. So no one likes to lose a client, me included. Even at this level, I don't like to lose a client, but I always come home and say, Monty, did you do everything you could do to be of service to that client? And if the answer is yes, there's nothing else that's for me to do. And I respect that client's decision. And we've had it where clients will leave us not because they're upset or, well, it could be, but maybe most of the time it's not that. They probably think it's better somewhere else, and they'll come back and like, oh no, I is it okay if I come back as a client? So when you show up just being your natural self, willing to be of service genuinely, I don't have all the answers. I'm not the best CPA in the world, but my clients know that I will try my hardest to get them the resolution that they so desire, properly prepare a tax return for them. And that's good with them. They'll say, I'm at peace. So, as you can see, our conversation is so centered on people and not money, but money becomes a byproduct when you're taking care of people in the most honest, most, positive, intentional way.
It's such a good point. And that's kind of what I wanted to ask you is I think for a lot of people, a goal is to hit seven figures, to become a millionaire. These are just terms that people associate with the dream, if you will. With everything you've accomplished, what does success look like for you now? And do you think it's changed in the last 20 years?
Absolutely. I think when I initially started out, I thought because we tend to operate one of two ways, out of greed or fear. And I thought I was greedy. I have weight issues. I just, for business, I thought it was just me being greedy until recent years, because my intention has changed and what I now view success is has changed, is less about finances and quality of life. I realized it wasn't greed, it was more of the fear of not having enough. And it's nothing wrong to use those types of emotions to get you to act and do things and make the sacrifice you need to make. But all success looks different to different people. Yeah, it's a lot of play out there in terms of become the next millionaire. And really, I get it because that's what our ego want to hear, but it's not necessarily what we need. So I don't blame them. We have a makeup where our ego is responding to that, where our spiritual side, our soul doesn't care. It just wants to be. And wanting to be doesn't necessarily lead to financial freedom and financial success. So, nothing wrong with ego, but once again, being aware of, okay, this is where I'm at, this is what I'm doing. Wanting to become a millionaire, I'm sure subconsciously that was in the back of my mind, but I didn't wake up and like, yeah, I want to be a millionaire. I just truly wanted to. I knew if I would work hard enough, long enough, that somehow, some way, I am going to make it, and whatever that make it mean. It was loosely just out there. So having this open belief that, yeah, I'm going to be financially free. Maybe that's a good thing, maybe that's a bad thing. But I once told my EA recently, I said success is really based on that individual. And when it comes to financial success, I would tell anyone now, look at the income that you're making. Once it becomes a headache, once it becomes,